35 small ways to improve your house in Minecraft. The majority of you won't have a house that looks like this, but what I've tried to do is make a house with a good amount of shape, a lot of variety, but is seriously lacking some of the details that would improve it somewhat. So this is the example we're going to be using, but I guarantee you there's at least one or two things in here that you can apply to your house, whether it's in a completely different style or not, and it should help improve it. Right, let's get straight into it. Number one is raise up your build 1 to 3 blocks in the air, either when you first make it, or if you've got world edit, just pop it up a few blocks so that you can terrain underneath it and create yourself a bit of landscape when you build your house. Number 2, you can mix up the palette of your house. I know that wood is very accessible and easy to use, but if you can get your hands on the resources, mixing up and changing different parts of the builds to different colored blocks, you can improve the style of your house very, very much. Just make sure that those colors match each other and work well together. Number 3, if you have full glass blocks inside your walls, simply replace them with normal glass panes and it will add a layer of depth that you couldn't get with just the flat wall. Number 4, you can actually take those straight out of the wall and replace them with stained glass panes if you've got your hands on the die. You can even mix in 2 different colors to try and give it a little effect. And don't forget to replace all of the windows on your house, but there are more window designs to come later on. Number 5, you can decorate the sides of your blank windows by adding a few trapdoors which mimic some shutters. Number 6, you can decorate the top of your windows. Now there are many ways to do this, just as the side. Here are a few ideas, adding a few upside down staircases on the top, or if you want a little bit of an overhang, make a little detailed decoration above it by utilizing the slabs and staircases like so. Number 7, you can decorate the bottom of your windows. I promise the whole window tricks will come to an end soon, but not quite yet, because number 8, you can add a windowsill in front of your windows using a slab or a staircase. Number 9, you can make an entirely different kind of window by offsetting your window 1 block back and adding a windowsill on the wall itself. So instead of using pane, you fill it up with full block, and then you can decorate that window, give it more shape using staircases. Number 10, you can create entirely different kinds of roofs. By mixing in some slabs and some full block, you can make something that's a little bit more rustic. Obviously, this doesn't fit this particular style of build, but I'm just trying to give plenty of tips and tricks for any kind of build that you might have. I know a lot of people prefer the rustic style. Speaking of rustic styles, at number 11, you can mix in some staircases into flat walls to try and give it a bit of texture. I know I've mentioned this many times, but it is a really good trick to give some depth. Number 12, you can add a foundation to pretty much any wall in various ways, as long as you choose something that works with the palette. For example, on a suburban house like this, you might want to choose something similar, but on a rustic style house, you might want to add some sort of cobblestone base, but a foundation layer to any build will help ground the entire building and help connect it to the floor. Number 13, adding an overhang to any roof is pretty much essential. Even if it's in any style, an overhang helps accentuate the roof and bring life to this building. I'm going to add it to every single bit of A-frame on this build and just see how it transforms the entire thing. All of the walls go from being incredibly flat to having some real substance to them. And these simple things, up to only 13, make a huge difference to the house. Number 14, now that you've done the overhang, you can do some highlights by increasing it by another block and adding a color that contrasts your roof color. You could have the overhang attached directly to the wall, or you could have an extra space like I do, so it does overhang by 2 blocks. This helps highlight the shape of the build and really bring it to life. Adding an underhang to your overhang, I really need to learn the correct terms, you can help complete the highlights of your building. Number 16, adding any kind of potted plant, whether it be in a flower bed or in normal little bits of block, it can really help bring some color to a bland build. Even though I've used quite a lot of color, any sort of greenery is a good idea. Number 17, likewise, you don't always have to add potted plants, you could just transform the terrain around you. I'm only going to add a small little segment here just full of flowers, but I did an entire video on terraining if you want to know more about that kind of thing. Number 18, you can make some plants that crawl up the side of any building, and that will help fill a space and add a splash of color to any build. You can mix in different kinds of leaves and add vines to your liking. Number 19, there are many ways of doing this, but by adding features on the side or the back of your buildings, you can make your build look much bigger without having to add any actual walls and roofs and stuff like that. So for example, I've made a little patio out the back, which has helped ground my build. Number 20, you can make false grass or patterns or use different green blocks to sort of change up your terrain. So for example, I've used green wool and some green concrete powder to create a false lawn. Number 21, now this won't apply to every single build in the world, but just like the patio, if you attach little features such as a pergola by using 2 log struts and then connecting a bunch of signs in between them by placing them one on top of the other, you can create a really cool looking pergola. Number 22, if some of the sides of your building are looking kind of similar, consider adding something realistic like a garage door. Obviously that fits the style of this build. If you have a rustic house, perhaps consider adding a stable door instead for your horse. Anything will work. Number 23, on top of your windowsills, consider adding a few flower pots with some nice tulips in them for a dash of colour. Number 24, if you don't have windowsills in your build, you can use some grass blocks and cover them in some trapdoors and then add the flowers in there so they're more like hanging baskets. This works particularly well in rustic styles, as you can imagine with the whole wood scenario. Just make sure you add flowers with plenty of colour and maybe a fern to match. Number 25, if you have a big blank wall, consider adding a separator block, maybe the same as your foundation layer, just to try and separate the 2 floors from each other, and it makes a big difference. Number 26, consider adding a chimney to every build that you do. They really do help give the build some height, especially if you make them nice and tall. I've chosen to make mine out of brick and detailed it with some staircases and some granite in there as well. You can make it as detailed as you like, or you could have just a simple 1x1 stack. But a chimney will help give the build some foundation and something to look at. Just make sure you place them in a very well thought out spot. Try to balance your build. Number 27, speaking of chimneys, you can add some fake smoke using cobwebs, or if you don't like cobwebs, you could go more complicated and add some multi-stained glass from white all the way to dark grey, and it gives it a bit of a sense of realism. Number 28, adding a pathway, whether it's with a shovel or with a more permanent fixture such as a stone one, is a perfect way to introduce a build to whoever is looking at it. You can even mix in different textures to give it a more rough and real feel. Number 29, consider adding a decoration that gives you a setting. Now this could be multiple different things. Obviously I have a suburban house, so what I'm going to make is a modern car. Unfortunately I completely forgot how to make cars and I made an abysmal quartz thing. But if it's a rustic house, consider making a horse cart or something like that. Number 30, consider also, apart from the patio, adding different things to the sides of your house to, again, increase the width and the connections to its surroundings. For example, in this suburban house, the perfect fit would be a swimming pool made out of dark prismarine. There are lots of different options for this kind of thing. Number 31, lighting is such a massive part of every Minecraft build. Unfortunately, most of the lighting blocks, such as torches and glowstone, aren't particularly attractive to look at, so we have to find ways of hiding them. Placing carpets on top of glowstone is a brilliant way of doing this, especially if it's green mixed in with some leaves. It looks like natural moss. But when it comes to torches, they're a bit harder to hide because they're not a full block, so I recommend putting them on top of posts, whether they're attached to a wall or just freestanding like a tiki torch. Number 32, don't be afraid to experiment with different kinds of roof style. I know I've gone for a typical A-frame, which is the easiest to do, but sometimes a bell shape is the way to go. Number 33, adding a single tree or even just a few around your house. A custom one will look infinitely better than the normal generated ones that you get in Minecraft. Number 34, you can mix in different blocks that are a very similar color, like I am here with the sand into the sandstone, and it can help improve the texture of your walls. It's a great way of making a very bland wall seem like there's more going on. Stone and andesite work well together too. Number 35, you can also, and this is our final one, change the way that you do the bulk of your roofs as well. Instead of just staircases, consider using a full block instead. It gives a different kind of style to a build. And that's it for today's video. If you remember what this house looked like before, it looked like this, a very basic wooden, glass, and an A-framed roof house. And after a while, it took about an hour to put all these changes in. Using all of these small things put together, it has transformed this entire house. So I assume if you pick apart any of these little tricks, you'll be able to transform your builds too. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you learned something. Goodbye.